Både sitt märkte nödvändigt både den bubble revev. Ron it Krisa even kasha morn. And now in Seisneg. And now in English. Good morning. How's your day been, my strange people? I'm Ron, and welcome to my spooky home. Or at least what passes for such lately. It's a hotel room in the Ann Arbor, Michigan area where my cats and I have been holed up since subhumans masquerading as real people had decided to set my tent on fire at the beginning of this year. Maybe not the exact beginning, but first weekend, right? So I'm gonna wait until a couple of people are up in chat, and before I start reading some more from this lovely, lovely bonkers ass document that somebody has wrote, and back around 2006, 7-ish, came into one of the Hellenic polytheist email lists that I was on at the time, and they are absolutely serious about this. They think they've really stumbled upon something, and it comes off really kind of crazy, and and the guy hates unibrows. Like, I'd forgotten about the weird fixation this guy has on unibrows, but somebody, I think it was either in Catboy Ranch or during the live chat on keffels.gg during a recent-ish stream from like a week or so ago, somebody compared it to Time Cube for pagans. And this isn't the first time I've heard somebody compare it to that. And yeah, it's that kind of bonkers. I don't think, like Jean Ray of Time Cube, that the person who wrote this is schizophrenic. Their thoughts seem a little bit more jointed than the likes we see in like Daniel Larson or Francis E. Deck or Jean Ray. But they may still be on the schizoaffective spectrum. Oh, we've got one person watching via Facebook. All right, it's not getting me on Twitch today. What the hell? Or at least it's not showing that I'm okay, I've got Twitch on. That's odd. I don't know why it's not showing Twitch when I wave over the little eyeball thing to see who's in audience tonight. Show. I'm a little bit late with getting the stream together tonight because, well, combination of, as I've said before, for some reason, the clock corner of my laptop is stuck on 7.5, maybe 7-minute 45 fast. Like, I've noticed it's getting closer to 8 minutes fast lately, and I don't know if it's just like perpetually running a tiny fraction of a second fast. And so in like the 9 months I've had this computer, that it's just gradually getting faster, that it was 7 minutes for a while and now it's getting closer and closer to 8. I don't know, but yeah, so part that and part just like I got stuck talking about stuff on Catboy Ranch drama posting today. Today is also my first day back on legit ADHD meds. And and when I say legit ADHD meds, I mean like, okay, so my psychiatrist, who I'm having issues with, and I've filed a couple complaints. Like I heard from people that they were starting to get Adderall refilled again in the last couple of months. And actually, like before that, even like back in August, I first said to her, so while I was while it was hard for me to get a prescription for Adderall or even Vyvanse filled, um, as far back as March, I want to say, was when my psychiatrist offered me a prescription for the non-stimulant Strattera, which I tried, and I noticed, like, after a couple months, like my anxiety was spiking, and in August, I definitely which okay, maybe August wasn't a great time to ask, because in July, the cats and I were still living in a tent, um, and somebody in July, I want to say week after my birthday, no, weekend of my birthday. I remember because I got back from City Club to discover this, that somebody had broken into my tent, and this was clearly a two-person job based on everything that was stolen, which was a lot. They'd broken into my tent, stole a bunch of shit, shit that I'm having the damnedest time replacing, like my radium alarm clock. I hope it kills them. I seriously do. I really hope that they break the crystal and get high and lick the radium paint on the face, and that it kills them. I hope that their jaw dissolves, because they deserve it. But yeah. So yes, Nigel. Nigel has been in an incredibly playful mood today, and it's fun because he's 11 years old and he's still my little boy. Oh. But yeah, so I got back and discovered a bunch of my meds were gone. Not all of them, so like they clearly did not take the full bag, but they took my ibuprofen, they took my Strattera, they took the 3 or 4 Xanax that I had left over just in case, even though I hadn't been taking that regularly for almost a year at that time. But I just had a few on me just in case I needed it, because of something, because I might have had a really bad panic attack. But they took those. They took the St. John's wort and my vitamin D supplement, both things that you can get at literally any store that has at least a pharmacy section, with like Tylenol and supplements and shit. And here's the funny thing is, like, my tent was like basically behind a Kroger, which is a grocery store chain for those who live outside of the part of the state where it's Kroger. You might live in a part of the U.S. where it's known as Ralph's or King Super. I think Jewel Osco is owned by Kroger as well now too. But yeah, like the tent was basically behind a Kroger where you can go in and pocket a bottle of Motrin. So why did they steal my ibuprofen? You can pocket a bottle of St. John's wort. So why steal mine? You can pocket a bottle of vitamin D capsules. So again, why steal mine? But I guess it was just easier to grab it there, especially things that have like no street value. Like I understand if I kind of understand if they didn't recognize the generic name of the Strattera, which I think is like atomoxetine. Like if you don't know what that is, you think, okay, maybe somebody's willing to pay for this, right? But they left my gabapentin, which I know has street value. And I know this because people have offered to buy it off of me. And I'm like, no, my back is like way more better when I take it than when I don't, even though it's one of those things that feels like it's not doing anything until I'm off it for like 2 days. Right? So I'm just like, I appreciate the offer. I could use the cash, but I like having an operable, I like having operable vertebrae a little bit better than I like having cash. Like, what am I going to do with cash if I can't go anywhere to spend it, right? So yeah, like they left my gabapentin, which I know has street value. They took my bottle of vitamin D capsules, which you could, which has no street value, right? They took my bottle of Stratera, which, if they didn't know what it was, they think, well, maybe it's worth something to somebody, right? I mean, I understand that if you don't recognize the name and, you don't, and you're just, and you and your partner, because like I said, based on everything that was taken, it was clearly a two-person job. So, you think, okay, I don't, we're not thinking well enough to like pull out our government subsidized smartphone and look up what this is. So let's assume it might have street value to someone. But yeah, like then in August, my psychiatrist kind of used the fact that I was homeless and had my meds stolen as like a way to deny trying to, get me a prescription of Adderall again, when I heard that like some of my friends, at least in other parts of the Great Lakes region, right, were able to get their Adderall and Vyvanse refilled again, like, around late August, maybe early September. So yeah, like she used that against me, which I'm like I even said this to my therapist at the time, and he said it's not the psychiatrist's job to determine, like, and I said, like, yeah, especially because after they were all stolen, I started doing a thing where I would go every week to my storage unit and refill my weekly pill pod organizers. So like each pod is one day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, bedtime. So I'd go technically I'd go every 6 days, because I'd go when I was down to, today, like that day's allotment of pills. So I'd go like every 6 days. So at least once a week, some weeks twice a week. So, and I'm like, yeah, it's especially because like now I just like keep the full vials in the storage unit, or at least I did then before I got into the hotel room. And I would go every 6 days. Like on the 6th day, I would go in, refill it for, the next 6 days, and then, come back, and I would do it like that. So, and, I'd just keep this on me at all times, because it's easier than worrying about getting them stolen again. And I'm like, lady, they stole the Stratera. Like, like, even if I wasn't, now keeping the full vials in my storage unit, to refill my weekly organizer once a week, which I then have on me for the rest of the week. Like, they stole the Stratera. Like, they stole the Stratera. They left the gabapentin, which definitely has street value. And she's just like, well, the Adderall, the stimulants that can raise your anxieties. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Like, people who do have the specific like EKG-ish, I forget which method it uses, but like people with ADHD overwhelmingly have like a part of the brain that scans differently. And so like that's where the adage of like, oh well, caffeine has the opposite effect on people who on kids with ADHD, like that's where that comes from. It's overly simplified to the point where I'm just like, yeah, I can understand why people say that, right? So I'm like, and like even my doctor, like my regular doctor, who was able to send in my prescription for my Adderall. She and I spoke yesterday, and she said, no, like it, stimulants can increase anxiety on people who have ADHD symptoms, but don't have that particular brain difference. That overwhelmingly correlates with ADHD diagnoses. And I say, yeah, exactly. And I was on it for several years before, the shortage finally started affecting me. And then, the whole thing with the psychiatrist, and she's like, yeah, I'll refill your prescription for now and talk to the psychiatrist. So like, yeah, so I finally got back on my ADHD meds that do anything for me. So I've got a bit of a dry mouth today because I've been used to not for a while, and it'll take. I know from experience that it takes takes a couple weeks to even itself out, and I don't have to chew gum and drink water all the time anymore. But so I'm gonna be so I'm gonna be getting up to like get a new drink and pee as a result of drinking fluids all day, a bit more than usual for the next few streams, but it's better that I have it than not. All right, I'm going to wait until we've got a couple people in chat before I start reading. So, or at least before I start reading from the Resurrect ISIS page again, because this is bonkers. If you were watching yesterday, my one person allegedly watching on YouTube, if you were watching yesterday, the guy who wrote this, again, he showed up in a couple of the Hellenic polytheist email lists that I was on around 2006 through 2013-ish was when I started falling out of those lists. And people just kind of like gradually phased out email lists as a big communication thing in general. But he showed up like within my first year on a couple of the lists, absolutely serious about this. Like, you may want to dismiss this as like a big satirical thing that is like a very clever trolling attempt. I assure you, in fact, I'm gonna share it in the comments for those who can see those. Okay, it's showing Twitch when I post the comment things. When I post the comments, it's showing Twitch, in addition to YouTube and Facebook. But when I wave my mousy cursor arrow thing over the little eyeball icon on the restream page that I stream from, it only shows Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter viewers, when it used to also show Twitch viewers as of, yesterday anyway. I wonder what the hell's up with this. Oh well, I'm not going to ask too many questions that are probably never going to be answered. But I had a thought. Oh well. If it's important, it'll come back to me. Oh right. Yeah, so that's right. Cuz I just decided to copy the URL for my Ko-Fi so I can pin it to the top of chat. And I'll tip me, please. Love to be where it's warm. Exclamation point, paste, send, and there it be. And I click the star to pin it. And so anyway, as I was saying, I understand like if somebody like wants to think this is satirical, because it's just kind of bonkers. And the page that I read from, because I accidentally went to I didn't go to the main page on this site first yesterday. I just clicked the one that came up in my my usual Bing search for it, and and this was the first page to come up in said Bing search. So I don't know why I didn't like think to go back to the homepage or look and make sure that I was reading from the homepage first. But the page that I read from yesterday, um, 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 the page entitled Genesis of ISIS. So resurrectisis.org/pagangenesis.htm. Yes, this is all HTML. This is clearly like written out by hand by the guy who did this. It's like the website coding language is clearly all one guy doing some pretty basic HTML for this. It's something, and I have to zoom in quite a bit because I am too blind to drive even with glasses. So this helps me read it a little bit easier. And when I was reading through this page, the Genesis of ISIS page yesterday, he goes on a lot about how you can tell that we modern humans are descended of ISIS because we lack a unibrow. Like the guy goes on at length about unibrows and like how you can see in this little girl in this photo here. That's a really cute little girl. Um, just just to look, and he says like, look, the genesis of ISIS began in Africa. Okay, like, yes, the cult of ISIS, as a recognized in the Greco-Roman world, was definitely an import from Egypt and Nubia. I think it was an import to Egypt from the kingdom of Nubia, which, if you didn't already know, were two distinct kingdoms at one time. I forget when they combined, because while I did have a brief interest in ancient Egypt, like as a little kid, like 7 or 8 years old. Oh God, I did a video. I did a story time video about that. Um, I did a story time video about my brief interest in please don't play. Please don't. I asked you not to play, you stupid thing. Okay. So it was about my when I was about 7 years old. Oh wait. When I was about 7 years old. No, not this one. Because it was about no. Why is that at the top of the page when I search Rowan 1334 mummy? No, not that one. Not that one. Ah, there we go. The roadkill incident of 1986. Okay, yeah. So I was about like 6 or 7. Copy link, and I'm going to add this to the chat box where people will hopefully want to go watch it on their own time. Paste. You know what? Let's. So yeah, I did this video talking about the time when I was really fascinated by ancient Egypt as like a little kid, like I said, like 6 or 7 years old. And I read this book that I saw that I saw promoted on Reading Rainbow, which was a PBS show starring LeVar Burton back in the 80s and 90s. And so I watched, and like there's this show, and they did a like a little book review, I guess you could call it that, about a book about ancient Egypt that was clearly written for like kids, like kids like between the ages of like 7 and 10. Let me see. Okay, Reading Rainbow Ancient Egypt. Am I going to find? Oh my God, I've lost a lot of weight since a couple of those videos. Um, I think this was it. I mean, it says it was uploaded 2 months ago, but it's got to be older than that, just looking at the film grain on this.
Rainbow is provided by Country Suites, or you can borrow a book at our Read It and Returning Library and return your next stay. Country Inns and Suites by Carlson, committed to
celebrating our 40th anniversary.
And by a ready-to-learn television cooperative agreement.
This episode was from
the U.S. Department of
89.
Education
And what the hell book
Public
did I
Broadcasting
read?
Service.
Really, I got my memories
The
crossed because I
Corporation for Public
remember I was
Broadcasting,
little.
and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you.
When I did,
Thank you.
When I tried to, when I thought I could modify roadkill. Like, I was little, like, I was 6 or 7. And, so clearly, like, I had some memories get crossed between the air date for this, which was 1989, apparently. Yeah, this episode of Reading Rainbow premiered on PBS in 1989. Okay, so clearly I got my memories crossed with something else. Yep, author and illustrator Aliki. Yep, I definitely saw this episode. So what the hell book did I read when I was 6 or 7? So this is gonna be racking my brain for a couple of weeks, I'm sure. God damn. So yeah, like, our memories clearly are not infallible. But yeah, yeah, aside from like a brief fascination with ancient Egypt when I was like 6 and 7, and clearly read some other book. You know what? Let me, because I might have read this book before Reading Rainbow did the episode. Okay, through the use of CAT scan technology. Okay, so look for thousands of years. Author and illustrator Aliki. Okay, let us go to seriously. Okay. Julio. Okay, so a leaky. Now, if you wrote the book, okay, Mummies Made in Egypt. This is the book that was in that episode. Okay, 1985. Yeah. Pimparigan, Miss Mary. Out with Pimp. Okay. If it was published in 1985, then I probably did read it. This probably is the one that I read, but I read it before it was on Reading Rainbow. Yes, Nigel? Nigel, bud. What's up, my sweet boy? Okay, so I probably did read this before it was on Reading Rainbow, because that's the only thing that makes it, because first published 1979. Okay, yeah, so this, okay, so I probably just got the memories crossed, because I probably did see that episode later. And of course, the episode went into a bit more of the information, because they want to encourage kids to read. That's what the show was about. It was about like doing these little book reviews, like a narration of selections from a book, and then it would end with, and then you'd go into like little segments about the topic of the book, and yeah, then we do these little like host segments with LeVar Burton and other people about the topic of the book, and it would encourage kids to read more. And again, the goal of the show, it is called Reading Rainbow because it's about encouraging kids to get into reading. Yep, have these little interview bits with the kids. Yeah, nobody better dislike this. Okay, yeah. Well, it's good to know that I did probably read this exact book when I was 6 or 7, considering that it took 10 years for Reading Rainbow to do an episode about. Seriously? Oh, man. So, yeah, it's good to know that I did read this book. This is the book that I read when I was 6 or 7 that got me in the mood to try and see if I could mummify a squirrel, as I detail in my old upload from like, oh god, that had to have been from like 2018, 2019, that I've titled The Roadkill Incident of 1986, because it's like in a short version, I'd read this book by Leakey, and sometime within the week after I took it back to the library, I saw a squirrel in the alley by our house that clearly got hit by a car, roadkill incident, of course. And somewhere, like maybe a couple feet from the squirrel, was a piece of scrap wire. And I remember this part in the book about, like removing the brain through the nose. And so there I am, like this little kid, this little like 7-year-old kid, like trying to squiddle the wire up in through a dead animal, like roadkill, thinking that I can pull the brain out. And then like, my mother was an ER nurse, so like we had medical gauze all over, like, all over the place, because she got stuff like bandages and all that free from work at the hospital. And I was thinking, okay, and then I'm gonna wrap it up in gauze and put it in rock salt so it dries out, and I'll have my own little mummy. That must, like something along those lines is what I was thinking. But yeah, like aside from that, I don't know much about ancient Egypt. It didn't really. I mean, yeah, I've got the Ankh tattoo on my thumb, and of course the prince's glyph, which is based on an Ankh. He called it the love symbol, or at least fans call it the love symbol. But yeah, it's also a popular symbol in the goth subculture. Main reason I have it tattooed on my thumb is just I like the look of it. I think it's really pretty. I also played a lot of tabletop RPG with like dice and pencils, Vampire the Masquerade, and especially Vampire Dark Ages when I was in high school. And yeah, they use Ankh symbolism in the book a lot, for the RPG. So, but yeah, like I never had like a huge interest in ancient Egyptian stuff. So I'm sure some of whatever the hell this this definitely this definitely wacky guy who wrote this website. I don't know as much about ancient Egyptian mythology as he does, but in the Hellenic pagan community, there is a lot of crossover because the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt was Greek, so obviously, yes. Phoebe, go get him. Oh no, that is Phoebe. You want Nigel to get you? You want your brother to get you? You do, don't you? You do. You do want him to get you. I know. Where is he? Why isn't he getting you? Oh, little Phoebe. Yes, yes, I know. Want to say hello to the... Okay, you don't want to say hello to the folks. You want to get chased. You want to get chased by your brother. Yes, I know. Yes, he's your adopted brother, but he's your brother and you love him. Oh, gosh. When the cats and I were in a tent, obviously much smaller than this hotel room, it became common for me to, remind the cats, don't be a brat, and you love your sister. Like we were all annoying each other. And now, this hotel room is about half the size of the apartment that I've applied for and being dicked around for. I still haven't heard back from my social worker about this, and it's kind of pissing me off. And I'm just curious, I picked up this wallet a few weeks ago. Hoping to have something that, no, of course not. Hoping to have something that I can transfer a bunch of stuff to for going out to either factory Mondays or city club on Fridays or Saturdays, whichever one I feel like going out to. Oh, you know what? I have an idea because I got to get up to pee. So let's bring this up to 1.5 time, just to 1.25. I'm already a few minutes in, and let's go to theater mode on the thing and switch to this tab and play some LeVar Burton goodness while I go pee.
Mummies Made in Egypt. Written and illustrated by Aliki. Read by Corinne Orr. Ancient Egypt was a long, narrow country, divided in half by the Nile River. The land beyond was desert. There the ancient Egyptians buried their dead. The ancient Egyptians had one great wish. That wish was to live forever. Egyptians believed that after they died, a new life began. They would live in their tombs as they lived on Earth. In order for a person to live forever, the body had to be preserved or mummified. A mummy is a corpse that has been dried out, so it will not decay. The earliest Egyptians were mummified naturally. The corpse was buried in the ground. The hot, dry sand of Egypt dried out the body. But as time went on and burials became more elaborate, people learned how to embalm or mummify their dead. Embalmers became so expert that the mummies they made remained preserved for thousands of years.
I do have my skivvies
Was a
on, but
long, complicated,
I figured
and
I might as well add some
process.
jeans just
It took 70 days
basic
for embalmers
decency.
to prepare a body. First, they took out the organs. They started with the brain. Then, the inner organs were removed. The body cavity was started with the brain.
Yep.
Then, the inner organs were removed. Embalmers to prepare a body. First, they took out the organs.
They start with, this is definitely the book I read at like 7 years old, circa 1986. And then I tried to make a mummy and then a few years later, the book was featured on Reading Rainbow, and I got a couple memories crossed. But hey, it is what it is, and it's fun times because I've been a weirdo for quite some time, and let me go to the thing here. Let me tell some people who've always been very kind to me that reading a pagan website. All right. So yeah, this was definitely the book that I read when I was about 7 years old, circa 1986-ish. And then a couple years later, it was featured on Reading Rainbow, and so I got the memories crossed a little bit, but not by much. But yeah, this is what inspired me to try and remove a brain from roadkill. And then my mother turned the corner into the alley and saw me putting a piece of scrap wire toward roadkill nostrils. And, because she wanted to, like, turn down the alley to go around, to the 7-Eleven and buy a carton of cigarettes. And she just, like, loudly exclaimed, "What are you doing to that squirrel?" And I dropped the wire and the roadkill, and I said, "It was dead when I found it." She said, "I can see that, but what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Trying to make a mummy." And then she just looked at me like this was just like, the weirdest thing she'd ever seen a child do, which, to be fair, it might have been. And then she exclaimed, "Why are you so weird?" Just, I mean, you can argue that maybe it gave me a bit of a complex at that time. I'm 7 years old, but at the same time, like, would you blame my mother? Like, do you blame my mother? I was doing some weird shit for a long ass time. So of course, it just seems natural that I would get involved in a subculture that, where, one of our, like, near deified singers, Susie Sue, does, some very clearly, like, Egyptian Eye of Horus influenced eye makeup. That's her signature look. It has been since like 1980, if not earlier. And like, Bela Lugosi's dead and vampires and, creepy kooky stuff. And I'm just like, my dad had the nerve to be surprised when I started getting into bands like Christian Death and Typo Negative and Virgin Prunes and Sisters of Mercy. Like, he had the nerve to be surprised that I was that I was getting into this stuff. He had the nerve to be surprised. I'm like, "Dad, I'm the kid who tried to mummify, like, who thought that he could mummify roadkill at the age of 7. So I'm like, I have no idea what the hell my parents were on sometimes, because, I would be sitting in front of Pee-wee's Playhouse every morning from like 1985 through 88, like, as long as it was on the air. Saturday mornings, CBS, Channel 11 in Toledo, Ohio. Parking in front of Pee-wee's Playhouse, I would scream for the secret word for the rest of the day, or at least until my mother threatened to backhand me if I didn't knock it off. Like, today's secret word is door. 2 hours. I'm getting this at like 8:30 in the morning. Today's secret word is door. Now you know what to do every time someone says the secret word. Scream real loud. 5 hours later, it's like 1 p.m. My mother, like somebody rings the bell. My mother says, "Go get the door." And I'm like, "Ah!" She's like, "I will backhand you if you don't knock it off and just go answer the door." Okay. It was the 80s. Kids were allowed to answer the door, and, without an adult. Kids as young as 6 were allowed to answer the door, without an adult, in the 80s. Like, don't judge us. That's just how we did things then. Like, I'm not one of those people who thinks that, crimes against children have gone up in, the last several decades. Like, when you look at, like, some of the true crime channels and podcasts on YouTube and elsewhere on the internet, like, this stuff was going on for decades. It's just, with the advent of radio and then television and now the internet, news about it goes around a lot faster, and so people are just more aware of it now. So it's like, I mean, yeah, I honestly think that, the crime stats, especially since crime stats are going down in the West. Now some of them like, certain personal violations that are crime. Those seem to be going up in some parts of the English speaking world, but I think part of that, or at least reporting, is going up. So I think part of that is victims are feeling more comfortable with reporting it. Like, that's the only one that seems to be going significantly up in the last several decades, like from where it was in like the 50s and 60s, versus the 80s versus now, right? So I think what's going on with that stat is that victims are just more comfortable with reporting it. I really think that's the case because, well, I mean, you look at the crime stats in the 60s, and a lot of the especially violent cases also included those violations. We've got Bible John in Scotland during the 60s. I mean, hell, Jack the Ripper targeted street workers. So, and it's believed by many that that he went unidentified simply because, a lot of the street workers that, knew each other were afraid to report it. Because, like, they're street workers. Who's going to believe them, right? So, so yeah, like we live in, like, in many ways, we live in like the safest period of human civilization in many ways. In other ways, maybe not so much. But but yeah, like I don't think kids are any more likely to get, snatched up from inside their house by answering a door, especially like when parents are home as well. Now versus in the 80s when it was fairly commonplace to tell a 6 or 7-year-old, go answer the door, I'm busy in the kitchen. At least it was in my neighborhood. Fairly common to, send the kid to, as young as 6 or 7 to go answer the door. Like 2, you don't want to send a 2-year-old to go answer the door. But a kid who is, reading and writing in cursive in class, yeah, go tell them to answer the door. So, and there are still working class neighborhoods in the English speaking world, even, where it is still commonplace to tell, kids that young to go answer the door because mom and or dad are busy at the moment. And I'm sure all the white women who watch all the true crime channels on YouTube are just like, oh, no, that's, what kind of parent does that? I'm like, parents who trust their kids to have good sense. But anyway, I really hope somebody like, it took about an hour last night for somebody to show up and watch me read some weirdness on the internet. Oh, my friend Jamie's checking in with me. She's asking me if I'm okay. I'm saying mostly. Okay, so I'm just telling her I was able to pay for tomorrow night because she's been checking in on me, and if I leave the county for a significant length of time, I could accidentally put my Section 8 in jeopardy. But I think she and her partner kind of just barely are also in the same county. and she was suggesting that if it came to it, I can stay with them. God damn it. Okay, now I've got stuff that I definitely already read. Okay, already passed that. The whole poop bunny fiasco that I'm calling it. If you know, you know. If you don't know, I am okay with people DMing me to, ask me to extrapolate, but I'm not giving them I'm not giving the toxic trio more ammo than necessary. So yeah, the poop bunny fiasco or the toxic trio fiasco, since it is an open triad, and two of the three, though one that does and one that does not live in the same state as me, in approximately the same area, though just over the county line. Something about that nonsense came up again today in a drama posting on Catboy Ranch, and if I was a less trustworthy person, I would go into some serious. I might go into the gory details, but I'm like, like, yeah, I know I know that there are some crazy ass people obsessed with Keffels to the point where they would be legit willing to give her money just to monitor whatever the hell is going on in the Catboy Ranch Discord server. But I also like to at least maintain the sense of privacy that being part of a a paywalled and or invite only Discord server, which I'm like paying the minimum to be a part of. It's like $3 a month via YouTube is not why I'm constantly broke. It's the fact that I'm homeless, which is why I'm constantly broke. But $3 a month for a weekly drop-in support group that I've been attending, not as regularly as some people, just because like the Monday afternoon or evening group that I've because it got big enough that we added a second day, and I say we as like the collective of Catboy Ranch. So yeah, like the morning groups were hard for me to check into regularly enough, and I've like since the Monday afternoon groups started, I think I've done like 2, maybe 3 of the 5 so far. So yeah, I say I'm a regular on the Monday afternoon groups. And it's just the principle of the thing. Like I said, I know that there are some crazy people who are obsessed with Keffels enough that they are willing to waste their money to spy on a bunch of dipshits online. And I say dipshits in like the kindest way possible. I mean, obviously I'm included in this. But yeah, it's just the principle of decency. So like I'm well aware that anything I say is likely to be screen capped and passed around to some just obsessive and weird people. some of whom may or may not be regular readers of the website that the quickie forum spawned, and it's just like, I am not one of those freaks, so I am going to maintain an air of decency about it and all that. Uh, I don't know why I'm sucked into today's drama posting chats. I don't know. I think I just needed a break from doing chores outside the motel room, and uh, yeah, I think I just needed a break from doing stuff today, because like the last 3 days in a row, I went out and did stuff that all of which needed to be done. I think I just got tired today, and so like vegging out on a Discord server and reading stuff that, I mean, okay, to be fair, some of it has to do with me. After all, our Poop Bunny fiasco, Toxic Trio fiasco. I'm going to settle on one of those code names, but yeah, I'm uh, uh, I'm so glad that my sarcasm goes over well with, a with an audience that seems disproportionately on the autism spectrum, and therefore less likely to pick up on sarcasm, especially in text. Um, I mean, yeah, I've only got ADHD, but I know people who are, AUTHD, as they say. Um, and honestly, like a lot of alternative subcultures seem to disproportionately attract neurodivergent folks of any stripe. Um, and I'm not saying this, obviously, ADHD. I've got the weird part of the brain that reacts differently to stimulants and dopamine processing. So so then what happens is but yeah, like in my experience, like alternative subcultures like like goth and punk and rivet heads especially seem to be disproportionately autistic. But then again, like industrial music, especially when like you get into the electro industrial, it's math, it's mathematical. Like I can understand this, like just because like I've known a lot of um ASD folks who who like who like the consistency of mathematical rhythms. Whereas, I mean, okay, yeah, I've had one of my pet rants before the stint of homelessness for the past going on year and a half now. But one of my pet rants that I've gone on many times before is like music is kind of like it's basically kind of a math. It's an artistic math, and like I've said left brain maths before, but the whole left brain right brain thing is it's not exactly true in the way that I was taught during the 80s. It's it's a it's significantly more complicated to the point where a lot of people feel safe in calling it like basically like pseudoscience, at this point, which I understand. But yeah, like I said, like music is like an artistic form of maths, and if your brain processes it in a certain way, like if you've got like neuroprocessing issues, um, such as one who has ADHD and or autism and or bipolar schizoaffective spectrum, you may be like more prone to like maybe less you may be more prone to either understanding like far more complex maths than a neurotypical person, or at least or if like you're a person like myself where maths just kind of like I don't know, I struggled with basic algebra in high school. Like my mom would brag about like me at like 5-6 years old testing at a 157 IQ on the children's Stanford Binet, which I'm inclined to give that a little bit more weight just because from what I remember anyway, the children's test for the Stanford Binet, it's designed for children as young as 2 or 3, and it's mostly logic puzzles. So like like kids who aren't quite reading yet, or if they are, it's very basic reading, right? Like I said, I'm inclined to like buy into that a little bit more, like when it's a children's test. But as an adult, like yeah, I can see how this can be skewed for certain socio-political climates. Um, but Yeah, like I said, I struggled with basic algebra in high school. And yeah, I tested at a 157 IQ when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I've done fuck all with it. If anything, I don't know. If anything, I think I'm not a fan of IQ tests, especially, you know, I don't know. Like, I think some parents can handle it better than others, or at least, can deal with, yeah, I think some parents can handle it better than others. Like, if a kid tests especially high, like I allegedly did, because I think in many ways that just kind of like set me up for failure, because like my parents had all of these, downright bizarre high expectations, like to the point where like I can definitely understand why my mother, who now I'm not in a position to diagnose, especially because she died about 10 years ago. Oh god, no, 11 years ago this September. So yeah, like my mother's been dead over a decade, and so I'm not in any, plus I'm not a mental health professional. I'm in no position to diagnose her, but I definitely think my mother would have qualified for a narcissistic personality disorder diagnosis. And so I can see how me testing at an especially high IQ, especially because like I was really close with her and especially her parents. So I can understand like why she simultaneously like saw that as a reflection of herself and would alternate between, like sometimes within the course of a day, alternate between hoping to live vicariously through me, but then like several hours later, like sometimes as soon as several hours later, sometimes as soon as several weeks later, or as as long as 5 weeks later, several weeks later. I don't know why I threw out an actual number there. I don't have good numbers on that. I have a very poor sense of time, perhaps due to my ADHD, because like executive dysfunction is a thing with ADHD. But anyway, yeah, like she would alternate between like clearly trying to live vicariously through me, and then like sometimes as soon as just a couple hours later would like be nitpicking like the tiniest little mistakes I could make and making me feel like I couldn't do anything right and I am doomed for failure. And so yeah, like I do not advocate for getting especially kids that young IQ tested, because I don't think there are as many people. I don't think there are that many people who could deal with it properly, especially if a kid tests especially high, because like you like then you've got this kid feeling like like unless the absolute perfect combination of parenting skills are applied, the kid is going to the kid has a chance of growing up like me, where like I can like I have to do things in a certain way, in part due to my ADHD neurodivergence. Like I have to. I've actually discovered that I prefer having an antique side flopper toaster, where I have to open it back up after a couple of minutes and physically turn the bread around, because it doesn't have an on-off switch. It doesn't automatically pop up. So if I wander away from the toaster, there's a high chance that the toast will go on fire and be a hazard. And I consciously know this. This is always at my forethought when I'm making toast. But when I had a pop-up toaster, I would easily wander away from my toast, forget I made toast for several hours, and then I come back to stone cold toast that I can either put back in the toaster on a low setting and but it'll end up a lot harder than I wanted it, to the point where like like, yeah, it'll warm up, but will butter melt? And if it does melt, like, or I could put it in the microwave where I've got soggy toast, right? to warm it up, so that butter would melt. Because, like, let's admit it, toast is a vehicle for butter or peanut butter. Like, that's why people make toast, because we want butter or jam or peanut butter, and we want it on a warm plank. And especially if you add butter first, or if butter is the only thing you're putting on your toast, that is what we want toast for. We want toast because we like butter, but we don't want to sit there and eat a stick of butter, because that's kind of gross. So yeah, like, I have to do these weird little things, and at the same time, like, I've always got my nagging mother in the back of my head being like, what the hell are you doing? You should have been so much better at life by now. You're in your 40s, you sad, pathetic little man. And I'm just like, I don't know. My brain no worky properly. Like, I was the kid who would, like, get up in the middle of class and, to tell the teacher about the book I'm reading, even though everybody else is doing, like a little kid, like 6, 7 years old. I was the kid who would get up in the middle of the class to tell the teacher about the book I was reading, because while everybody else is working on, like their phonics worksheets, which I've already finished. So I'm reading a book, but, but then I'm, like, at risk of being a distraction. So, like, we had to work out, something where, like, if I finished my classwork, for that segment of the day, like we had to work out the system, because I was very bad at remembering stuff like, no, you can't get up and tell the teacher about the book you're reading, or like, or whatever. So, like, we had to work out all these weird little systems so that, I would be less of a nuisance in school. But, but my dad, my parents still couldn't get it through their thick skulls that, like, no, like, maybe the kid does need Ritalin. Like, maybe Mr. and Mrs. McElroy, maybe the kid does, in fact, need Ritalin. And my dad's like, no, that's basically legal speed. Like, except that it's technically not. Like, yeah, we're talking about related chemical compounds, but they're also different enough that, it's not the same thing. Like, no, this is not the same as street drugs, but in a legal dose. And I really hate when people say that. Now, that's not to say it can't be abused as a street drugs, but like, no, it's technically a different thing. Yes, it's related, but it's also related in, like, how like domestic dogs, wolves, and dingoes are related. Like, there are just enough differences to call them different things. I mean, yeah, sometimes, like, what counts as a wolf or a coyote can seem arbitrary as far as, like, biological taxonomy goes, but yeah, like, we can definitely say a wolf and a coyote is significantly different enough from a dog that, yes, a dog may be able to create reproductively viable offspring with a wolf and or coyote, and have this, like, half wild subspecies hybrid dog. But it's like, it's just different enough that there's a reason to call it a different thing. And technically speaking, most domestic dog breeds have more genetically in common with the Australian dingo than they do with the Eurasian gray wolf. That's technically the or at least is widely considered the parent species of the domestic dog. So it's like centuries, millennia of selective breeding have made the domestic dog, at least most breeds, share more in common with the Australian dingo, which developed in a completely different part of the world. So yeah, it's like, like, I love to pull out these little fun facts that that I would not know if not for the weird way my ADHD brain works. But yeah, like I got sucked in to some drama posting chat today on the Discord chat because yeah, it was at least tangentially related to myself because of the toxic trio nonsense that I issued a final statement on earlier this week. Yeah, I did that earlier this week. But just in case, let us go to here and scroll down. Oh, hey, wait. Okay, never mind. I saw that earlier when it happened. Scroll down. Copy link. Oh, there's my Nigel. All of my cats are accomplished blanket models. Highly accomplished blanket models because that is the way I'm guaranteed to get the best pictures of them. And they're being especially adorable and funny and cute as soon as I pull up. They decide to stop and pay attention to what I'm doing and like not, do the cute thing anymore. Usually. Occasionally I'm able to capture it. Okay, and we hit send just to have some activity in chat, and hopefully it will boost some stuff. That would be nice. And yeah, Nigel's a very accomplished blanket model. As you can see in that picture of him, he's so gorgeous. He's my gorgeous boy. He's my beautiful little boy, and I love him so much. Okay, somebody answers my... I see. Okay, I found out what FA and FO means. Yay! I mean, I probably could have pieced it together, but I don't know. The, those people do so many like little obscure references to media that I do not watch, like anime and shit and like ARG fiction and whatever, that I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck this is. So I just like kind of assumed that FAFO was some kind of dumb media reference. I learned something today. Da, 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 da. And I went off ranting about my Irish language name. And I admit, like, oh God, I want to say around 2019, somebody was busting up my Instagram DMs, telling me that, like, telling me in a way that seriously was fucking with my head. Like, I asked several friends, like, including Angela, in New York, and Best X in Lansing, and a couple of other people, and like, do I say my name with one syllable or two? Because this person was like going off, like trying to convince me that I say my name as Roan, Roan, which I think is, I think that's the Irish word for seal. I know and I just earlier today went off on what's his face on the We're in Hell channel. It's a video that's about a year old, but he was humorously mispronouncing the name of a Swedish newspaper, and I just like put in like like at least how the pronunciation on my Bing Translate app sounded to me. Okay, it's a Ron with the O with the fada, no A. Okay, but yeah, like she was trying to convince me that at least I'm assuming she based on the screen name, at least as I remember it, and probably influenced by the fact that most of the people I know on Instagram are 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 more ladylike than boylike. Um, but yeah, this person was seriously trying to convince me, like for 3 days. Like it got to the point where like middle of the second day, I was legit like starting to think, wait, do I say my name improperly? Because like they were being so persistent that I say my name as Ron versus Ruan, which I know I say Ruan, and I admit that my Irish pronunciation isn't perfect. I have a tendency to roll my R's in the scant Irish that I do know because my second language is Welsh. I learned it when I was 12, and I also shared earlier today the video that I did. Um, I shared a lot of my own videos today. Um, so yeah, there was a video that I did a few years ago. Not squirrel, but about why I speak Welsh as my second language and why I learned when I was like 12. Um, and um, and then what happened was so I have a tendency to roll my R's. In Irish, which isn't as common as it is in Welsh. So, like, I know my Irish pronunciation is not great. It's, arguably barely passable, I suppose you could say. Um, it's, but I don't know. Some stuff is passable. I have literally been in tears trying to learn Irish, and I'm not the only person who says this. Like my friend Allie, who now lives in France, specifically the Brittany region, which is the Celtic region, and her second language is Breton, which is more closely related to Welsh and Cornish than it is to Irish, Scottish, and Manx. The six extant Celtic languages. So she lives in Celtic France, basically, and she says like with the other people she knows who are learning Celtic languages, the people who are learning Irish, Scottish, or Manx, especially Irish, this seems to be a thing, versus those who are learning Cornish, Welsh, or Breton. Oh dear. Seem to be having a much harder time, and somebody on one of the Celtic language Discord servers I'm on also looked it up, and it does seem to be that like Irish is, as far as like how they grade things with learning languages, especially as a second language. Irish does seem to be one that gives people a harder time than Welsh does, which I don't get, but it does seem to be a thing. So after learning that, I feel a little bit less bad about being in tears trying to learn Irish. But yeah, it's a thing, and um, um, so yeah, but yeah, the short version of that 40-some minute video about why I speak Welsh, even though I've got a very Irish forename, and my even my surname, which I said 20 minutes ago or something, is McElroy. Obviously Irish on my dad's side of the family. My mother's side is Cornish, though. My mother's side is largely Cornish. And I was closer to her side of the family, which I'd already said. And mm, mm, mm. So wait. But yeah, and like my grandfather's native language, on my mother's side, my Tashao, like him and his village when he was growing up in the 1920s and 30s, they spoke like a local pidgin or Creole that was like a mix of English and seemingly random Cornish. Yeah, people say, oh, Cornish was a dead language until like the 60s when, there was like a concentrated revival effort. But, they had to revive it from something, right? Like we're not talking classical Latin dead. It's just like, it was, it it's just like it wasn't considered like its own intact language at that point anymore, thus the revival effort. So like they had to revive it from something, right? And oh my gosh, kind of wish I wasn't streaming now. The local situation has been he's they're really something. They're really I know that they have like way worse anxiety than I do, and that is being very apparent this last 2.5 weeks. I will leave it at that because it gets into some fairly personal information really fast, and I'm just like, dear, please, please, I like you, but you're driving me nuts. And I kind of want to address this with them sooner than later. So yeah, I guess I will put off more reading of this until like tomorrow. I think I should end the stream within a half an hour, unless I get like at least 2 more people joining the audience, so that I have some kind of audience to read this to. As it is, I'm thinking I'm going to end the stream earlier than I hoped to, and then what I will cry a lot because I've not gotten tipped tonight so far, and Cats and I do not want to be back on the street, so I'm going to cry a lot to some people who've been very helpful to me, and all of that. So I don't want them worrying too much. I think I'm going to end the stream now, just because, yeah, they just DM'd me with something that they're very concerned about, and while I can tell it's not a big deal, their anxiety has been maxed out for 2.5 weeks. Like they are literally making themselves feel physically ill in like and like, you know, like just from the anxiety, which I know from my own anxieties, especially when I was in my 20s, as they still are, that like no, like when my anxiety was maxed out like this, like over different things, of course, um but yeah, I want to be there for them. So okay, um I am being a good, I am going to be the good, vaguely defined partner of sorts. I don't know what the hell to call this the local situation, but um they're very sweet. I like them very much. And while this began with them kind of upset with me, it's become a very it's become a very distressing and like borderline self-harming anxiety loop for them. So I am going to go tend to the local nebulously defined partner of sorts, and I'm gonna be the good guy here and be a good nebulously defined partner and go end the stream early and take care of the local situation's needs, um, because even though at this point, um, you know, they're no longer upset with me, they are still panicking, and I got to be there. So even through text, I got to be there as much as as much as, you know. Like I said, I've had anxiety spikes as bad as they're going through right now before, and I can say all I want to, you know, about how it gets better and stuff. I still know that it's better to actually like have somebody there, who understands, than to feel like I'm just like kind of like not being there. So, all right, I'm gonna end my ending comments. I'm gonna end earlier than I expected for a number of reasons. Primarily at this point because I want to take care of my situationship and their like uh, highly anxious feelings they're going through right now, just to um, assure them that everything's okay and all of that. So I'm going to be wrapping up, as I tend to round this all out with. Be sure to drink your water, take your meds if you need them. If you don't need meds, don't take any. Um, um, and otherwise, take care of yourselves and have exactly the kind of day you deserve. Hopefully, a good one. Um, 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 um. I will see you all tomorrow. If you're watching, well, you're going to be watching this in archive mode. But yeah, I will be back tomorrow to hopefully get to reading some more of this absolutely bonkers webpage that I've known about for almost 20 years. And like I said, last I remember, the guy who wrote this is absolutely serious about everything on it, especially his weird rages against unibrows. So, bats and kisses. Nosta ahuil.